This is Lance, and once again, welcome to Card Hunter. I'm actually going to be taking this opportunity to showcase the board editor feature of Card Hunter, and this is a feature available to Card Hunter Club members, and so hopefully this will not only showcase just the awesome maps that you can create, but give you a little bit of an idea of how to use the board editor and what all that you can really achieve using the board editor. So we'll go ahead and just get started. So the very first thing is we're going to select the tiles and the tile palette so that we can start laying down some terrain for our map. So we're going to start off with some water terrain. Now, I have an affinity for creating boat type scenery for my maps, and it's not something that actually exists in the game. However, I began with this idea of fighting on a boat and some swashbuckling dwarves and decided that I rather liked that, and so I ran with that idea. And so I'm just going to lay down some water terrain. Now this is probably more water than I'm going to want, and I'm going to override some of this with other terrain later, but we'll just go ahead and lay this down. Now I'm going to select on the terrain type. Now this actually shows the different kinds of terrain: the block, difficult, open, victory, and impassable. And water terrain is considered impassable, which means unfortunately you can't occupy that same terrain. However, you can draw line of sight through it, so you can see right over the water. And I'm actually going to turn that particular terrain type off, and I'll show you why. When I start with a new tile, and I'm going to go ahead and select my next tile type from the tile palette, and just drop this down so that we can figure out what kind of terrain. So we're going to actually use a tile from the tavern. Get some nice wood floors for a boat that we're going to make. And if you notice, it's showing up green. Now the reason for that is green is considered open terrain, and so what it's actually just showing is that this you can occupy it without any issue. And so unfortunately I don't really like that, and I'm not liking this boat either. But we're gonna go ahead and you can just fix that fairly easily by changing the different terrain. Now one thing we're gonna do is make this into a sailboat. So just throw a wooden pillar to represent the mast of the boat, and I want to make this boat a little bit longer, and so we're going to actually change the shape of the entire board to some extent. Now I'm going to need some more water so that I can fix the issues that I have with my current design, and go back to water. Just some simple blue impassable water. And I'm liking that boat even more now. So we're actually going to have a oddly shaped map, and I'm going to get rid of some of these tiles. Now you can actually get rid of the tiles by just going to grabbing the eraser and cutting off the excess tiles. So it's going to be a very simple map. Now I'm actually going to leave a little bit of an edge right here, and I'll show you why in a minute. So we'll go back to the terrain. Now as I said, you can see how this is block terrain, and so you can't occupy or see through it. You have the open terrain and the impassable terrain. I'm going to go ahead and turn this layer off so it won't be visible, so we'll actually get a good idea of what the map will look like once we're actually playing on it. And so go ahead and go back to Well, actually, we're going to try something new. We're going to go ahead and go to the lower doodads. Now, lower doodads are generally the last item I add to a board, or the first item I add once I've established exactly how big I want my map to be. And so we're going to start off, and these actually make sure that the snap to grid feature is on, so this will just snap right into place. It gives the board a nice edge to it, so it looks just a lot cleaner and nicer. And so just go selecting the particular doodad that I want and just fill this out. So in addition to these lower doodads, and see, another nice feature is there's these hotkeys, so I can actually flip the shape of this with the Y or X button. I can move doodads like this doodad right here, just pick it up and move it by using the hotkeys, and now I can finish out this map and use the hotkeys to just speed things up. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the lower doodads layer because I'm actually done with the lower doodads. Now there are a few others that we can add, just different kinds of borders, but this is the border that I personally favor, and so we'll just keep it. Now the table, you actually get two different kinds of tables, just plain wooden table or that grassy table, so we're gonna go with the wooden table. And we're gonna go ahead, and I want to make sure that we're just making this as cosmetically appealing as possible. So we're gonna go with some, not upper doodads, because those are just not my cup of tea, but place some lower doodads. And so we're going to give this boat just a little bit of an edge. Now I can use this snap to grid feature to make this go exactly in the same place every time, and it will actually snap in the middle of the square. However, I don't want it to be there, and so I'm going to turn that off and use this in a rather unconventional fashion to border my boat and give it that nice clean look of a handrail. So gonna go ahead and just surround the edges. Now this is a very plain boat, however, and we get to the end, and what happens is there's not enough left over, but one thing I can do is, the cool thing about these doodads is they lap. And so I can just pick this one up and it will just overlap like that, and no one's the wiser. And so just continue on giving that edge. Now, one thing I will mention is you have all sorts of different kinds of maps that you can make with the board editor, and so you're not really limited except for by your imagination and what you really want to make. I mean, you have forests and caverns and inns and mansions and whatever else you could possibly think of is pretty much available to you. And so we have a nice edge. Now, this doesn't really look like a boat at the moment, but one thing we're going to do is go back to tiles, and we're actually going to give this a little bit of dimension. The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to go ahead and go back to the tavern and put up some wall. Now, using the tiles in rather unconventional way is a great exercise in getting your map to do or look like exactly what you want it to. And so now it has a little more dimension and feels a little more like a boat. Give it one last little feature. Maybe a barrel. Now, I don't really want to use a tile barrel. However, what we can do instead of that is we can go back to the decals and see if we can't find something that we like. I actually like this, so we're just going to go ahead and place that. Make sure it doesn't snap to the grid, just place that right there. And voila, you have a nice little map that you can play on. Now, we're going to go ahead and turn some of these layers off. Now, turn back on the terrain layer. Now, one thing that I'm going to go ahead and do, and this is primarily cosmetic, is I'm going to make the edge of this boat not impassable terrain, but make it impassable terrain, not block terrain. So if I wanted to actually add another boat or make this map larger, the border right there is no longer going to act like a wall. It will just act like some more water. And so it just provides that illusion of a wonderful boat to sail on. And so the last thing that I'm going to go ahead and do, other than throw down one little doodad that is actually well, every pirate boat needs some treasure, so let's throw down some treasure. We want this to snap to the grid. Now, every map needs to have a victory location, at least for multiplayer. And so we're going to go ahead and throw this down so that you can see that that square is clearly going to be a victory location, and make sure that that is now a victory location. Spawn points are one thing that I tend to overlook or forget, and so we're going to go ahead and add some spawn points so we can actually play on this map. And so just make this a spawn point, and the little dash here, the character will be facing north. And so this direction is north, and so you really don't want to start off with your back turned to your enemy. So let's go ahead and make that facing south. Let's another couple of spaces for that player's spawn point, and now we want our characters to be facing north over here. So there's a few more, and now this map is actually ready. There are a couple other things that I won't get into, just because they're not really necessary, especially for this map, like the size 2, so we can actually make space for a character that is of a different size. And so that is the board editor. We've now created our map, and we can actually go ahead and save this and begin playing on it as soon as we're ready. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.